You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name and politics is our game, and we're going to be doing lots of politics this evening. We've got 7 political personalities for you to meet and take a look at. We start with Senator Dick Durbin, who is seeking his 3rd term. He is the #2 Senate Democratic leader, and they're lining up to face him in the Republican primary, to face him in 2008 as he seeks that 3rd term. Dr. Steve Sauerberg is there as a candidate in that Republican primary, possibly Jim Nolepa, who ran against and almost beat Congressman Bill Lipinski in 1994, and perhaps others will be lining up. Senator Durbin returned recently from a trip to Iraq and other countries and held a press conference on August 11th right in front of the Vietnam War Memorial in the Chicago Loop. And as you're watching this in either the last week of August or the first week of September 2007, the Democrats in Congress are getting ready to battle the Republicans and the President on his efforts to continue the surge into next year, in Iraq that is, and continue to his efforts, he would certainly say, to stabilize, he might say to win the war in Iraq. All of that's going to be hashed out through General Petraeus and the White House report in mid-September as the President Bush, puts on his case. You're going to watch now 11 minutes with Senator Dick Durbin. First his statement, then 6 questions. 4 from yours truly, Jeff Berkowitz, and 2 from other reporters who were present. Look, it comes down to this. This is what we're talking about as we head into the middle of September. Does the military progress that was made in Iraq and has been conceded by Senator Dick Durbin, does that progress matter? How much political progress must be made for the Democrats to decide to stay in Iraq or allow the President to do so and continue to fund that? Is Iraq's success or progress, is that a political problem for Democrats? As Democratic Congressman James Clyburn from South Carolina has suggested, should the Democrats be as concerned about al-Qaeda in Iraq as they appear to be about al-Qaeda in Pakistan and Afghanistan? Can we continue to fight the al-Qaeda in Iraq if we remove most of the troops in Iraq, as the Democrats suggest, as Senator Dick Durbin suggests? How does that work? Senator Dick Durbin meets the press. Take a look.
Young men and women who were serving their country so well, and I hope that in fairness to them that you'll acknowledge, whatever remarks I say, that we owe them a great debt of gratitude and need to keep them and their families in our thoughts and prayers. Keep in mind that when I visited Iraq, it was 125 degrees. These soldiers are in full battle uniform, carrying 40 to 50 pounds at least with them, trying to keep themselves alive and to perform their mission. The unit that I visited 10 miles south of Baghdad lost a soldier last week. He was inside a tank for 10 hours and died of dehydration. Despite all of the best efforts to protect our troops, they're dying not just from bullets and bombs, but from one of the worst fighting environments that our soldiers have ever faced. We ought to keep that in mind as we enjoy the comforts of home and perhaps not think as we should about all that they're giving. Now let me say specifically about Iraq. The surge has brought 20,000 more American soldiers on the scene. They have secured more areas. But the bottom line is that every small step forward in security has been accompanied by a giant step backwards when it comes to political progress. What we have in Iraq today is not a government of national unity. It's a government that's falling apart. The Shias are being forced out and the Sunnis are walking out. And what's left is not leadership and it's not unity. This president may put a good face on the situation in Iraq, but is a desperate situation which gets worse. To suggest that if we just stay the course and send more American soldiers into battle, that very soon we're going to see an end to it, is naive and wrong. I don't think President Bush understood that the invasion of Iraq would unleash a nightmare on the Middle East. That nightmare continues today. We also see in Afghanistan a challenging situation, but I'm more hopeful in Afghanistan than Iraq. First, we have a NATO force there, many nations joining us, which is what we should have had from the start in Iraq. Secondly, it is a war which has a leader among the Afghan people that we can work with, Helmut Karzai. It is also a war against the people really responsible for 9/11, the Al-Qaeda and Taliban forces. That's a war that we should have focused our resources on, and we have to win. As I visited on the front line there between Pakistan and Afghanistan, it's really clear to me that progress is being made, and we have to stick with it. Fewer American soldiers are involved, but it's an important battle and one that shouldn't be overlooked. Pakistan is a third front in the war on terrorism. The political instability in Pakistan has to be a worry to Americans. We need the cooperation of Pakistan when it comes to gathering intelligence and fighting back Al-Qaeda. I met with President Musharraf. We talked for a long period of time. I believe that he feels he's doing everything that he can. I think he can do more. I hope that President Bush continues to put pressure on him to stop the Al-Qaeda movements from Pakistan into Afghanistan. And the last point I want to make is something that is often overlooked by Americans. There is collateral damage to this war. Beyond the loss of innocent civilian lives, we are seeing millions of Iraqis who are being forced out of their homes. 2 million Iraqis today have been displaced in Iraq. They are looking for another place to live that's safer. 2 million have been forced out of the country. Take the tiny country of Jordan. Jordan, a country friendly to the United States, a country that is really striving for peace in the Middle East, is a country of 6 million people. 600,000 Iraqi refugees have now moved to Jordan. 10% of their population consists of Iraqi refugees in desperate need of schooling and health care and the basics in life. Jordan is a country that is paying a heavy price for our invasion of Iraq. And to think that 10% of their population now consists of guests and asylum seekers, consider for a moment what the United States would be like if 30 million refugees moved into our country in a matter of several years. That's what they're up against. So when we talk about the repercussions of this invasion of Iraq, it goes way beyond our soldiers and the lives that we've given. It goes beyond the innocent Iraqis that have died. It is the instability in the Middle East that has resulted from this invasion. As we return to Congress in the next few weeks, we'll be debating Iraq. I was on a cargo plane just a couple days ago. There were 80 American soldiers on there flying back from Kuwait into Iraq. The soldier sitting next to me was 20 years old from Arizona. He said to me, "Senator, are you going to stop this war?" And I said, "We need 7 more Republican senators to vote with us." He said, "I wish one of those senators could spend a day in my life here in Iraq as a soldier." I said, "What do you do?" He said, "My job is to detonate and dismantle roadside bombs." 20 years old, from Arizona, risking his life every day. It's a message I need to take back to the Senate floor. For those who think that we can continue this war indefinitely, America has paid a heavy price, and it's time for a new direction. Happy to answer.
Senator, in your comments regarding Pakistan, are you worried about what Senator Obama and Congressman Tancredo had to say about Pakistan and the repercussions as a result of that?
You know, it was interesting that the comments of Senator Obama did not come up in my conversation with President Musharraf. Keep in mind what Senator Obama said has been repeated by the President and many others since. What he said is that if and when Pakistan becomes a safe haven, the United States is going to root out the terrorism there. That is something we all understand. That border is a political creation between Pakistan and Afghanistan. And on the Pakistan side of the border, we have to do everything in our power to stop the rise of Al-Qaeda. The statements of Congressman Tancredo were an embarrassment to the United States and totally irresponsible. For this man who has made a career out of hatred and division in America, to suggest that the United States would bomb the holy cities of Mecca and Medina is the ultimate irresponsibility. I said as much to President Musharraf, and I believe it. On our side, if someone suggested bombing Jerusalem or the Vatican City as a political tactic or a strategic tactic, we would naturally find that repulsive. We would reject it. So I tried to assure those who are listening that our war is not against the Islamic faith. Our war is against extremists of anything.
What is it about the Al-Qaeda who are gathered in Afghanistan and fighting there and on the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan? What is it about those Al-Qaeda who concern you more than the Al-Qaeda who are clearly gathered in Iraq?
Keep in mind that when the United States invaded Iraq, there were no Al-Qaeda forces present. What was supposed to be an end to terrorism has in fact spawned more terrorism. That's not my opinion, it's the opinion of our intelligence agencies. We need to continue to fight Al-Qaeda in Iraq. The proposal which I support says that the United States troops will continue to battle the Al-Qaeda terrorists in Iraq. We will stop being the policemen on the beat. We will not be combat soldiers in every neighborhood in Iraq. The Iraqi army has to stand up and accept that responsibility. So I think we have to continue to fight Al-Qaeda wherever we find them. This is the force responsible for 9/11. These are the terrorists who still give pause to all of us when we consider the safety of our own country. In Afghanistan, I think what we need to do, some of the things we need to do are so basic. Right now, we have eight agricultural advisors in the whole nation of Afghanistan. We also have this resurgence in uncontrolled area in the growth of poverty, which results in opium and narcotics that are transferred around the world. Some of the basic things we need to do is to provide agricultural specialists to work with the Afghani people. Now, many people, when they think of fighting terrorism, think of soldiers, policemen, heavy armaments. But to win the hearts and minds of the people in many of these countries, we have to get back to basics. So one of the things I'll be working with is to make sure that we have nation builders and community organizers and agricultural specialists so that Afghanistan can turn the corner.
What kind of progress? You said you saw military progress in Anbar province, yes. But what kind of political progress would be sufficient for you to stay longer in Iraq than the 8 months you contemplate?
My feeling is that, as General Petraeus has said, I met with him, we can't win this war militarily. We could send in every available soldier in America, and it wouldn't bring an end to the war in Iraq. The only thing that will bring an end to the war in Iraq is when the people of Iraq, through their elected leaders, come together. There's only so much we can do as outsiders. We're an occupation force. We have to really trust that the Iraqi people will move forward through their leadership. I have virtually no confidence in al-Maliki as Prime Minister. He has not demonstrated to me or to the American people that he can bring that nation together. Now, the reality is that if we are going to try to pick a successor, that person is going to be branded as the American-sponsored, Bush-sponsored leader. And that is probably a fate that will doom their opportunity to lead. So it's a terrible situation, way beyond what was envisioned when President Bush sold us out on the invasion.
Well, what would be in the best interest of the United States in terms of the leadership change or staying the same between Musharraf and Bhutto? Do you have an idea of what diplomatically we might be trying to accomplish there?
What President Musharraf is trying to do is to build a coalition and win an election. That's why he sat down with Benazir Bhutto, who's a political enemy, to see if they could come up with a coalition ticket. And I think that's a good thing. I hope they do it. But I don't want to predict who should be the next leader in Pakistan. That's up to the Pakistan people.
Is the 123 treaty that's, or agreement that the U.S. has struck with India, is that a good agreement?
Well, I think it accepts the reality that India is a nuclear power. And even though we don't agree, or I think it was legal, the way they reached this status, we now want to deal with the reality. Try to put in place some rules in terms of proliferation and nuclear development. I think that's a sensible thing. I will tell you the Pakistanis don't like the agreement. They think they're being discriminated against. And they're hoping in some future time that they can have an understanding with the United States. It's very simple.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
And now we go to the spin room. It was after the AFL-CIO presidential debate, Democratic presidential debate on August 7th. The spin room at Soldier Field. And we speak with John Sweeney, the AFL-CIO union boss. He's the president of that union. How happy he is with Clinton and Edwards and Obama all saying that they want to mend NAFTA, not end NAFTA. Of course, free traders wouldn't mend or end NAFTA, but there are no Democratic free traders these days and very few Republicans who are free traders. And then we go on to Robert Gibbs, Communications Director, Obama for America. Robert Gibbs was in good form. He must have said at least 100 times that Hillary and Washington lobbyists, and put them together, just that phrase, Hillary and Washington lobbyists, maybe 100 times or so it seemed. Again, the question of how Obama deals with al-Qaeda in Iraq, and Gibbs is reminding us what Barack Obama keeps saying. It's time for those American troops to come home and the Iraqis to handle their own affairs. Easier said than done. Then Harold Schattberger, president of the Firefighters Union, he defends the Employee Free Choice Act. It's supported by all Democratic presidential candidates. That legislation removes the secret ballot from union members. Imagine that, no secret ballot. Sweeney, Gibbs, Schattberger. Enjoy the show. The top three, I mean Clinton and Obama and Edwards, they were all talking about modifying NAFTA and CAFTA. They weren't talking about ending it. Kucinich is talking about ending it. You see that difference?
Well, a couple of them talked about ending it.
Which ones? Who talked about ending it other than Kucinich?
Rights of workers to collective bargaining.
I think that Joe Biden talked about modifying it, and there was another one. But in any event,
you live with that, just modifying, not ending NAFTA and CAFTA?
well, we're supporting the elimination of NAFTA because it hasn't worked and it hasn't been successful, and it certainly hasn't been enforced. But we are strongly supporting in the debate that's going on now in the Congress, core labor standards in trade agreements and the right of workers to organize, as well as addressing human rights issues and environmental concerns. And we will strive to see our trade agreements including all of that by whatever name.
I got one question.
All right, Bob Gibbs, it didn't seem like Barack was going after Hillary Clinton this evening. He mentioned Washington lobbyists, he mentioned other things that pertain to her, but I don't know that he ever mentioned her name. A lot of this crowd really doesn't know Washington lobbyists is, in his view, Hillary Clinton.
Well, I think what you saw tonight was a forceful case for change, a smart and tough foreign policy, a change in the way we do politics, not just changing the parties in Washington, but making sure that Washington insiders don't have too much influence. You know, we've had a debate going for a couple of days now about the influence of Washington lobbyists, and I think if you don't believe Washington lobbyists have an undue influence on this process, you've likely been in Washington too long.
In the war, there was a different direction on a question asked about al-Qaeda, and if we leave, al-Qaeda becomes more prominent. What do we do then? Hillary Clinton was pretty strong. In fact, she was talking about Al-Anbar province as an example of what the U.S. troops can do. Barack didn't quite match her on that point. Is she focusing on the general and he's focusing on the primary?
You'd have to ask Hillary Clinton about that. Let's understand that there wasn't al-Qaeda in Iraq until a group of people that sat on that stage cast misguided votes to invade a country that had nothing to do with September 11th. Had we listened to the judgment of Barack Obama 4.5 or 5 years ago, we wouldn't have gone to Iraq and al-Qaeda wouldn't be there either.
He's always said, given that he wasn't just going to buck out, he was going to act responsibly. He still has to deal with the al-Qaeda who are there now, doesn't he?
There's no question. We have to be as careful getting out as we were careless getting in. But we're not going to make serious progress in Iraq unless or until the factions that are in Iraq, the Kurds, the Sunnis, and the Shia, decide to come together and create a government that can truly govern Iraq. The United States can't govern Iraq. The United States Army can't stay there forever, and they shouldn't. It's time to start bringing our men and women home. It's time to get the Iraqis to agree on how to govern themselves and to agree on more than just taking a vacation in August. I think what you saw was, again, a forceful case for a change in our foreign policy, a tough foreign policy and a smart foreign policy. I think it was pretty obvious that when Senator Clinton tried to get in her shot, the crowd booed. One of the commentators said it seemed like Rex Grossman had thrown another interception at Soldier Field.
This was a labor crowd. What did Barack Obama do tonight to woo the labor crowd more than Hillary Clinton or John Edwards?
Again, I think it was present a forceful case for change. There's, do you believe the special interests, or do you believe the interests of working men and women? And I think what you saw was one candidate who's going to defend the Washington interests and one candidate who's going to defend the interests of working men and women.
It's whether or not that we're going to have employees have a chance to be able to select a union to represent their interests without threat or intimidation, and to be able to do so through card check, where simply, as this country was founded on, the majority should rule. And if a majority of employees elect to be represented by a union, they shouldn't have to go through multiple years of lawsuits and lawyers and labor board decisions. They should simply be able to select a union and have a contract bargain.
Terrific. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Good evening.
All right.
What do you say to those conservatives who say the Employee Free Choice Act nullifies what America cares about is employees should have a right to a secret ballot?
I think that Employee Free Choice Act is just the reverse. It is about employees that have the ability on a work site to show their interest and desire to be represented by a union, and a majority of those employees should prevail. We don't need labor boards set up either different.
So you don't need a secret ballot?
Well, I think you can have it both ways. I think that you can work through the ability of having an election, but the fact of the matter is, if you have a workplace and employees as a clear majority sign a card that says, I want union representation, they shouldn't be forced through labor relation board decisions, unit determination decisions, lawsuits, and stumbling blocks that basically help to deny them that very representation.
Now let's go over to two more Democratic presidential candidates in that spin room after the Democratic presidential candidate debate. Let's take a look at Senator Dodd and Congressman Dennis Kucinich, and also Reverend Jesse Jackson from the Rainbow Push Coalition. Let's go over to Senator Dodd. Like other Democratic presidential candidates, he talks about federal spending and other programs that he wants, but who pays? He says raise taxes on those earning more than $200,000 or $250,000 a year. Raise taxes on anybody else? Let's go over to Reverend Jesse Jackson. It's interesting to hear where he stands between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and his topic of concern for that particular day. And last but not least, Congressman Dennis Kucinich, running for president a second time, and he's arguing that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton can't say that they oppose the war. That's interesting. Congressman Kucinich says he's going to be the next president. That's interesting. The young, smart, attractive redhead you see walking in the background as Congressman Kucinich is speaking, that's his wife of 2 years, Elizabeth Harper Kucinich. She's interesting. Dodd Kucinich and Reverend Jesse Jackson, a public affairs trifecta. Enjoy the segment. Senator Dodd, any reason why you think you didn't talk about taxes at all, the Bush tax cuts?
No, they do the best they can, and obviously a big issue as well, tax policy and what happens.
What would you say on the Bush tax cuts? Would you repeal them all?
No, I think, look, tax policy has to be pro-growth. Good jobs get created out of it. Got to be fair here. It's got to be responsible, which a lot of their tax policies are not responsible. But I want to make sure that we're going to make it possible for people to be able to save, which we don't do in this country here, to retire with dignity and have pensions and retirement accounts. They're going to vest properly and healthily. Here in tax policy, you can do an awful lot in that regard.
Would you repeal all the Bush tax cuts?
All what?
All the Bush tax cuts?
Yeah, I think I would, the ones that I know about anyway, and certainly do a different job on the estate tax than he's doing. And
would that be a tax increase for those over? If you repeal all those Bush tax cuts, then here, one of your competitors, Bill Richardson says he wouldn't repeal tax cuts for those who are earning $150,000. Maybe for those $200,000 he would.
The top income.
Well, so where would you go?
Well, the top 1% of income earners, I think,
What
frankly.
does that mean to you? $300,000 and above?
I think the number's around 250, 200,000.
So that's where you'd raise them $250,000.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks.
You're not committing between Hillary and Barack at this point?
No, Barack as would get my favorite son vote, but I'm not involved in any campaign.
I mean, so you're supporting Barack Obama at this point?
Well, I'll vote for him, but I'm not campaigning for anyone.
You're not throwing Operation Push. You're not throwing them behind it?
Matter of fact, what we're really doing is opening up our platform to all the candidates, because one of them will be the next president. And we really want to keep pushing the agenda. I've not been asked to campaign for him by him, but quite apart from that, I'm concerned that we have the right agenda. For example, tonight.
Let me just stick with that. We'll get to the agenda in a second. But that's an important point. I want to make sure people understand this. You're saying Barack Obama has your personal support, your vote, but you're not out really working or supporting Barack Obama as you might for a candidate. You're just giving him your vote.
I've not been asked to.
You haven't been asked by Barack Obama to give him your support?
No, to campaign.
If he does, would you do it?
Well, that's hypothetical. Right now, my focus is on trying to get an agenda so that whoever wins, we the people win. For example, tonight is supposed to focus on campaign contributions, and who raised the most money, the focus is on infrastructure.
Would you have to concede that, given the amount of money you have, given the organization you have and resources, your goal here is to steer this group, your competitors, toward a better position in your view toward the war, as opposed to really thinking you can win this? Would you concede that?
Did you watch this tonight?
I did. I watched all of it.
Well, if you watched it, you saw the response I got from the crowd.
Right, but on the polling, on the numbers, that's you're not going to tell me your numbers are up there with Hillary and Barack.
I'm telling you.
And John Edwards, are you?
I'm telling you that the race is in January.
So you think by then you seriously can be ahead of those folks?
You know, of course. And I would ask you, I don't know what your ratings are, but your ratings might be better in January than they are today. And I'm saying that as people hear my message, people heard my message today. They saw that workers have a real champion in this race. And as workers understand that, you watch what happens. Get ready for Seabiscuit. Thanks.
Can we ask you one question on the war?
Yeah, sure.
Just one question on the war. Because it sounds like Hillary and Barack and Edwards are moving toward the center. I listened to the debate tonight. I heard you talk about stopping the funding of that.
They're moving towards the center, all right? The center of Baghdad.
No, but I'm saying, are they slipping away? Because you do want to steer them in a direction to vote for stopping the funding of this war, right?
You know what?
I mean, they actually voted that way on the last funding issue,
when you
right?
vote 90% of the time for a war, you can't really say that you oppose the war. I mean, this is Chicago, okay? We're in Chicago.
So you're saying because Hillary and Barack
I want you to go to a Chicago ward club and see if this passes the straight face test. That you tell someone, oh, I'm against the war, and then you vote for it, funding it 90% of the time. You get laughed out of a ward club with that proposition.
Obama and Edwards and Clinton,
I'm saying
they can't say they really oppose the war. Is that your point?
I'm telling you, I'm just suggesting to you humbly, as a journalist, take that question to a Chicago ward club without even mentioning names. If somebody votes for funding the war more than 90% of the time and votes to give over $400 billion for a war, and that person says they're opposed to the war, is that believable? Ask the people of Chicago. See what
this was AFL. That's it. Hope you liked the show. We have highlighted the issues for the year 2008. For the Democrats, certainly a major issue is who's going to be the nominee for President of the United States in the Democratic Party. Is it going to be Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama? For the Republicans, I don't think I can narrow it at this point to two possibilities for the Republican nominee for President of the United States. There's at least one and maybe two individuals who are not yet officially in that race for the Republican nomination for President, not yet, and they are going to be there. Can Iraq, the war on terrorism, national security, and your safety, can all of that be unbundled, or is it just one issue? How important are the domestic issues relative to the national security issue? Come on back next week and every week to Public Affairs when we discuss those issues. And remember, we discuss, you decide.